Welcome to The Hindu Editorial. My name is Ryan Pinto and I am going to discuss with you today's editorial. The first article that we are going to discuss is Pakistan and Financial Action Task Force. Let's see what is the link with Pakistan and with terrorism and what is Financial Action Task Force doing, which because of which Pakistan is responding. Black and grey. Pakistan's actions against terrorists. So we know one thing, that Pakistan's policy is using terrorism for foreign diplomacy. It uses terrorism as its part of the diplomacy. So that is a very bad thing about Pakistan. And its idea is to bleed India with thousand cuts. So these two things you must remember. And this article is in reference to the international relation as well as India's national security. You will understand why. Pakistan's action against terrorists keep up appearances but do not inspire confidence. The timing of the arrest of Rahman Lakhvi, the LET operations commander and linked to the 2008 Mumbai attacks, just ahead of the next meet of the global watchdog, the FATF, has been greeted with skepticism in India. So, what is this trying to say? Financial Action Task Force is a group of countries which sees to it that money is not used for terror financing and other criminal offenses. And these countries, then, if any country is using this money for terror financing, supporting terrorism, etc., these countries will put strict punishments on that country. Example, Pakistan. But what does Pakistan do whenever this meeting of the FATF, that is Financial Action Task Force, is going to come up? Pakistan does some show or some symbolic gesture. Like this time, they have arrested Rahman Lakhvi. He was the LET operations commander linked to the 2008 26 November 2008 Mumbai attacks. So he was the commander, and FATF was about to meet. So Pakistan did this symbolic gesture. And India has greeted it with skepticism. India knows that they are just doing it for show. So remember the name Rahman Lakhvi. Remember Financial Action Task Force. Its arrest and conviction of Hafiz Saeed and other LET leaders in terror financing cases. The passing of the anti-terrorism and money laundering laws in Pakistan Assembly to bring them in line with FATF mandated international norms, and the publication of new terrorist lists at various times, all timed just before the FATF reviews of Pakistan's status. So whenever the Pakistan's status of a terror state is going to be taken up by FATF, what do? This time they have arrested Rahman Lakhvi. Earlier, what did they do? They arrested Hafiz Saeed with a small case of terror financing. Hafiz Saeed is involved in killing of the people, but they have just put terror financing. Passing of anti-terrorism laws and money laundering laws. Bringing a list of terrorists, publication of the list of terrorists. So all these are just symbolic, and India has no confidence on Pakistan that they will stop all this. The FATF's Asia Pacific Joint Group is to meet in January to prepare recommendations for a final decision on Pakistan's status to be presented to the FATF plenary session in February. Pakistan was brought back into the grey list in June 2018. So FATF's Asia Pacific Joint Group is going to meet, and they are going to have a discussion on the status of Pakistan. Should it be there in the grey list or not? So that is why Pakistan has done this. The three lists. So which are the three lists? The plenary session can choose on one of the three options in keeping Pakistan on the grey list. First is the grey list, where it is subject to some financial restrictions. So if any country comes in the gray list, it will be subject to financial restrictions. Then it is blacklist. It can be downgraded to a blacklist where it will face strong, stringent sanctions. And the third is all or close the review and let Pakistan off the three lists of the lists together. Pakistan will now hope that its progress in their action and having key terror figures in prison earn it a reprieve. So Pakistan is hoping for this. India is hoping for the blacklist. So remember the three lists. First is the grey list, blacklist, and third is removal from the lists. So in the grey list, there are some financial restrictions. In the blacklist, strong restrictions. Whereas the third is remove them from all the lists. So you must understand why Pakistan is arresting some terrorists and doing some symbolic things. The fear for India is that if Pakistan earns that reprieve means if they are removed from the list, it can reverse all its actions. India has watched the arrests of all these men and other terrorists on India's most wanted list in the past, only to find out that they are released on bail or let off over prosecutorial lapses once the word's gaze is averted. So, what India has seen is if Pakistan does this symbolic thing, FATF removes them from the lists, all of India's efforts will be in vain because India is the most suffering country from terrorists and terrorists from Pakistan. So we'll see examples. Last month, a Pakistan's court decision to overturn the conviction of Al Qaeda leader Ahmad Omar Sheikh Said. Remember? So we have seen Zakiur Rahman Lakwi. This is we have seen Hafiz Said, LET commander. This is Ahmad Omar Sheikh Said, a terrorist India was forced to release during 1999 IC-814 hijacking. So we had seen our India's Air India plane, which was taken to Kandahar, Afghanistan, and it was during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee time that we had released few terrorists so that our Indians could be saved. Otherwise, they would have bombed or killed our Indians in the plane. This happened in 1999. One of the terrorists was Ahmad Omar Sheikh Said. For 2002 murder of he was arrested for the 2000, then later he had committed a crime on killing American journalist which is Daniel, his name is Daniel Pearl. Shows how Pakistan's investigating agencies and judicial system treat terrorism. So he was in India's jail. He was released due to the hijacking which happened. He then went on to kill American journalist Daniel Pearl. Recently, a Pakistan's court released him. So it shows how Pakistan treats terrorism. Hafiz Saeed has been convicted only of terror financing charges and faces concurrent sentencing of about 6 years. So remember Ahmad Omar Sheikh Said, Al Qaeda terrorist. Hafiz Saeed, he is the LAT, Lashkar-e-Toiba terrorist. As would Lakwi, Zakiur Rahman Lakwi, who faces similar charges despite long record in transnational terror attacks. Others like Masood Azhar continue to evade any kind of prosecution despite UN sanctions. For India and its battle to have Pakistan's establishment held accountable on this issue, the FATF grey listing is a necessary lever to keep the process going. So what India is hoping from the FATF that they keep Pakistan in the list. They don't remove them from the list. So this will help you in your national security as well as your international relations. Remember Pakistan's link with terrorism. Remember FATF, Financial Action Task Force, and these terrorist names so that it helps you in your exams. The next is on gig economy. So when we say gig economy, it means those people who are in the informal, you can not say exactly informal sector. They are working for these companies, but they are like freelancers. So you must have seen, if you see the screen, The person who's working for Zomato is actually like a freelancer. He does not have to, he's not on the payrolls of Zomato or Uber. But his name is registered with the company and some background check and all is done. They don't get provident fund, etc. So this is gig economy. Quality gigs, a solution to urban unemployment. With no urban unemployment to Narega as yet, there must be a focus on supporting new forms of employment. So, one thing you must understand, recently when COVID 19 happened, many people went to the rural areas and they got employment in Narega, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, or Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. But what about the urban poor? What about the urban laborer? Where will he go? What will he get? That is the biggest issue now currently which we are facing. Economic commentators have busied themselves with debating the need for fiscal expansion and the viability of V-shaped recovery. So the economic commentators or the economists are always talking about V-shaped recovery. V-shaped recovery means, say for example, our GDP was over here because of COVID-19 and the other situation came down, and then it is going to come back again. So that is V-shaped recovery. So the economists are more concerned on that. But what about unemployment? Unemployment numbers have increased. Employment has reduced. More recent data for from the Center for Monitoring Economy, Indian Economy, that is, remember this, CMIE. A lot of data will be taken from here. Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, however, point to a gradual slowdown in employment recovery from the month of July, with the latest numbers pointing to a sharp rise in the national unemployment rates from 6.51% in November to 9.06% for the month of December. So just remember, unemployment was 6.51 in November, is increased to a massive 9.6% in December. So this is a big concern. For labor flocking back to rural India, employment support came in the form of increased outlay for National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So, as I just told you, Narega scheme helped the rural labor, which witnessed a 20 to 43% increase in person work days. This increased dependency on Narega has seen the Rural Development Ministry spend 90% of its 86,400 crore allocation by the month of November. So they had kept 86,400 rupees for the Rural Development Ministry for employment, out of which 90% is already spent, and the year is still going to be continuing. So till March, the you have the year end. So till that it will be continuing. So you have to remember how important Narega was, while still being unable to fill demands of nearly 13%. So much expenditure was done, but still 13% of the 75 million households that demanded work couldn't be got. So 87% people got work, 13% did not. In several Indian cities, however, shuttered businesses have meant the millions of workers have either had to leave or had to take up new forms of work, with some findings the burgeoning gig economy to be their only source of employment. So the above part we saw what happened in the rural areas. Let's see what happened in the cities. Many businesses had shut down because of the COVID-19, and the laborers or the workers here had in the cities had to leave and go to the rural areas. But people who stayed back in the cities, they had no other choice but to leave their work or else remain unemployed. And if they had to leave their work and join another company or another place, mostly it was absorbed by the increasing gig economy. The metrics, and as I have told you, gig economy means Zomato, Swiggy, Uber, Ola, all of them are part. It is here that the Fair Work Foundation's annual review of platform labor gains prominence. So remember, this is, as I told you, CMIE is important for understanding Indian economy. There is a report which was given by Fair Work Foundation's annual review. The report evaluates the well-being of gig workers on 11 digital platforms and does so by evaluating them on 5 metrics. So what this report does is Fair Work Foundation, they are seeing the gig workers, how they are performing or what they are doing and how they are taken care of by Zomato, Uber, Swiggy, etc. Fair pay, it is on the basis of fair pay, fair conditions, fair contracts, fair management, fair representation. So they look into all these areas. In its finding, in Fair Work Foundation's finding, only two firms, Urban Company and Flipkart, scored greater than 5 out of 10, while 7 scored only 2 or less. Just imagine, out of 10 points, taking into consideration fair play, fair conditions, fair contracts, fair management, fair representation, 7 companies are getting 2 or less marks, means how they are exploiting the workers. Most concerning, perhaps, is the fact that the bottom of the rankings are rounded off by India's 4 largest platform giants, namely, and the most bottom rank was by Uber, Ola, Swiggy, and Zomato, which have so many people working for it. With no so what is the problem? With no urban equivalent to Narega on the horizon, there must be an increased impetus on evaluating, regulating, and supporting new forms of employment that may currently be serving as an informal safety net for those desperately in search. So we need to evaluate, regulate, and support new forms of employment, especially the gig economy. The first and the most critical task at hand remains evaluation. Our current understanding of gig work and workers remain constrained to the limited discourses. So the first thing that we need to do is evaluate, get their data, do some analysis. The problem is there are limited disclosures made by these platforms. Furthermore, with every independent studies evaluating the scale and impact of these platforms, most regulators continue to remain in dark on basic questions surrounding platform labor. As of now, there exists no authoritative estimate on the total number of gig workers in India. So, so the regulators, so the analyst and the government does not know how many people are working in these companies, and these companies are very opaque. They are not transparent with many details. Issue of regulation. So first we saw evaluation, now regulation. The next step is significantly more sensitive and involves regulation. The reason for the sensitivity, for the less sensitivity, primarily revolves around the varied natures of gig work. While some workers use platforms as a side hustle, for others it continues to serve as a primary source of employment. So why there is a problem of regulation of this gig work? Because for some it is like a side business. Like a person who is working somewhere might just put a car in Uber and he will employ someone and someone else is riding. But for others, it is a primary source of employment. A person might have his own car and run work for Uber. This dynamic is further complicated by the risk of one size fits all regulatory strategy. Perhaps more viable strategy then would be conditional government partnership. So what the government can do some partnership with these companies with platforms under some of its flagship schemes. Here the successful pilot of Swiggy's street food vendors program under the PM Swanidhi. So what happened is, in the government announced PM Swanidhi program so that the street vendors can earn some money. So what Swiggy did is it partnered with government. Okay, or you can say this name Swanidhi program is also called as PM Street Vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi scheme. May prove to be an example. While Swiggy has announced the onboarding of 36,000 street vendors onto the platform under the scheme, it has looked to ensure that each vendor is registered and certified by the FSSAI, that is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. So remember Swanidhi program. Remember FSSAI is going to be checking or seeing or giving licenses to these food vendors. The simultaneous creation of jobs alongside voluntary adoption of quality standards is an example of mutually benefit partnership. So here they are looking at two things: creation of job and quality. So the government can partner with these gig economy firms. So we saw what is gig economy. We saw what happened in the rural areas, what happened in the cities, and why we need to support the gig economy. Urban employment. Similar collaboration on urban employment that require labor platforms to comply with disclosure norms and worker compensation standards to access government support could be one way for the government to kill two birds with one stone. So, by having these labor platforms and by having the disclosure, that is the transparency, worker compensation, all this, so employment and quality standards both can be covered. Current proposals for urban employment guarantee peg daily worker wages at approximately 300 rupees at a cost of rupees 1 lakh crore to the exchequer. Collaborate. If the government has to give the money today for unemployment, they'll have to give 300 rupees per person, and it will go up to 1 lakh crore. If they collaborate with these platforms, gig platforms, it would not only bring down the cost significantly for both the state and their partners, but it would create an environment where firms would more likely to cooperate with the state, as opposed to adopting an antagonistic position in what could prove to be a long-winded legal battle. So instead of these gig workers fighting with the state and not disclosing and lot of issues, the state can help the gig workers collaborate and get our two desire. One is employment, second is quality. So we are talking about the symbiotic ties, limited fiscal space and growing need to fuel the country's consumption base must push the government to build symbiotic relation with new partners. With Industry 4.0 platform absorbing increasing number of urban workforce, evaluation, collaboration, regulation must be the government's mantra. So remember, we have a limited fiscal phase. Limited fiscal phase means government has less money. There is growing need to fuel the country's consumption base. There is a growing need for employment, growing need for quality. This can be by both coming together. As the pandemic forces India to define its own understanding of the future work, it falls upon the state to ensure that this future is defined not only by the quantity of jobs it creates, but also the quality of livelihoods they provide for. So the pandemic forces India to define its own understanding of the future work. So the gig economy, it is called Industry 4.0, Industrial Revolution 4.0 is the future. So it should ensure quantity of jobs also, but quality of livelihoods also, so that the gig workers are not exploited. So this can only happen if the government, if the country has the registered, regulated, evaluated these gig workers. Third important today is a nod to recognizing the value of housework. So we saw first important was FATF in Pakistan. Second was the gig workers. I saw some details, some data on the unemployment. Remember, unemployment rate December is 9.06%. So this also can be linked to the employment, wages, laborers, but it is mostly more towards the women issues. And you have been seeing this debate since ages, the value of housework. Women play a very important role in the house. They do a lot of work, but it is not recognized in the GDP. plus it is not recognized as wages. If you notice, if you understand, if there were no women working in the house as mothers or wives or daughters, because what men mostly consider is their nature is to work for the house, then you need to keep a maid, or the men had to work alone, which would affect the productivity outside. And if you keep a maid, you'll have to give the money. So this is how we have to see value of housework. This is an agenda all political parties and not just Makkal Nidhi Mayam could incorporate in their manifestos. So the editor, the person who's writing, is saying that this should be on all political parties' agenda, because women make around 48% of India's population. Now, why this is in news? In the context of forthcoming state assembly election in Tamil Nadu, the Makkal Nidhi Mayam, led by veteran actor Kamal Hassan, has made an eye-catching election promise that is evidently targeted at a large constituency of voters, women who are full-time housemakers. The party has promised to recognize housework as a salaried profession by making homemakers till now, that is hitherto, unrecognized and unmonetized for their home work at home. So till now, the homemakers, the women who are working at home, housewives or daughters or sisters, etc., their work was not valued. So what has Kamal Hassan done? Kamal Hassan, who is the leader of, or he's started a party, Makkal Nidhi Mayam, has made this as his uh, way of pulling the voters for towards him. He has made a very eye-catching election promise. And was this origin or the demand which did it just happen? Answer is no. It was long time back this demand was there. The demand for wages for household work arose in the context of struggle and consciousness raising associated in the with the second wave of women's movement in North America and Europe. So in the 19th and the 20th century, there were various waves of women rights. First being the political rights, next being the social and economic rights. So a lot of in the second wave, wages for housework was asked for. So the demand is not just recently, it is there in the 19th, 20th century. Alongside other demands for social and political equality, women's rights campaigners made visible and politicized women's everyday experience of housework and childcare in the private realm of the household. So, alongside with the political and social equality, the women rights activists or campaigners are asking for economic equality also, because every day in the household, in the homes, women are working, giving their best, and they are not getting any money for it. In doing this, they challenge the assumption natural that a natural affinity for housework was rooted in the essential nature of women. They challenge this mentality that why should only women work, and if they are working, why shouldn't they be paid? They are it was in the social issues or in the society, it was thought that it is natural for the women to work and women should be working. That is called as labor of love. But the current campaigners are talking against it. For leading women rights activists of the 1960s and 70s, it was important to bust the myth that women's work at home was a personal service with no links to capitalist production. So there was a myth that it was a personal service. Women are working at home, it is a personal service. Labor of love, there is no link to capitalist production. Answer is wrong. If women work at home, they are supporting the men who later go to the factories and they work efficiently. And for whom are they working? They are working for the big businessmen, industrialists. So the industrialists are enjoying the fruits of what women are doing at home. So if you can see the indirect connection. In a concrete sense, this meant linking the exploitation of worker in the factory to women's work at home. So you are understanding? Women are working, they are serving the men. Men in turn are going in the factories, they are getting exploited, but the final result or final benefit is to the capitalist. As Maria Rosa della Costa and Selma James, so remember some feminist or sociologist name, Maria Rosa della Costa and Salma James wrote in their seminal piece in 1972. By providing free services at home, women made possible the surviving of the working class household at subsistence level wages with obvious benefit for industry and capital. This is what I just told you, how the capitalists were using indirectly the women for their benefit. Housework, on the other hand, had come to define the very nature of a woman. This disallowed women from seeing it as real work or as a social contract, and therefore the women who sought to negotiate housework with their partners were seen as nagging. So it was in the society, it was considered as a norm that women should work only at home and they are the ones who are responsible. For the advocates of wages of housework, the wage that the state ought to pay women would make them autonomous of the men on whom they were dependent. So those who are saying the women should be given some wages, the government should give some wages. Why they are saying that? So that they do not need to then depend on the men. More fundamentally, the very demand for a wage was a repudiation of the housework as an expression of women's nature. It was a revolt against assigned social role of women. So first is they will become independent. Second is they will be free. They will be able to do what they want to, and the men mindset that no, the women only have to do the housework, that will go away. Therein lay the radical nature of the demand for wages, not in money itself. So money is not the only thing why women are asking for wages, or these you can say sociologists or activists are asking. It was for freedom, it was for independence, it was for changing the mindset. There was disagreement, but not everybody was asking for the wages. There was disagreement among the women ideologues of the second wave on what payment of a wage would actually mean for women. The sociologist Anne Oakley, so remember this. So we have seen, one second, we have seen Maria Rosa Dalla Costa, Selma James, now we are seeing Anne Oakley, who studied the history of housework in her path breaking book published in 1970s. Wages for housework would only imprison women further within the household, increase their social isolation, and dissuade men from sharing housework. So the positive points are that they will be earning more money, they will be independent, they will be free, the mindset will go. But the negative point is they will be more confined in the houses, they will have to face social isolation, and this will stop men from actually sharing housework because they are getting paid for. Others too argued that goal of women's movement must be to not ask for wages but to free women from the daily drudgery of routine domestic chores and enable them to participate in all spheres of social life, including paid employment outside the household. What people like Anne Oakley are saying is if women are going to get money, they will confine themselves in the house. They will be very comfortable. Okay, if we are getting the money in the house, we'll remain in the house, will not go out. So the goal of the women ideologues or women right activists should be that instead of focusing on the household wages, pull them out of the houses, pull the women out, let them work, let them live a social life, let them be free outside. The debate around monetary remuneration for housework remained unresolved within the women's movement. A report published by International Labour Organization in 2018 shows that globally women perform 76.2% of their total hours of unpaid care work, more than three times as much as men. In Asia and Pacific, this figure rises to 80%. So just remember, out of the total work that they do, 80% is unpaid in Asia Pacific region, whereas globally 76.2. So, so the first point is we saw who brought out this and what was the context. Second is we saw the history. We saw the various sociologists and women rights activists who are asking for this. We saw the positive, negative points of their housework, the payment of their housework. Now, the issue is how to define the constitution. Which women should be given the money, which should not? Because sometimes in a house, women do all the work. Sometimes there are houses where men are doing. There are houses where women and men, the husband and the wife, they both share the things and do it. So it's a tricky question of how this constituency is to be defined. It would be better to strengthen the demand for a universal basic income for income poor households and make sure that the cash transfer to the family reaches women directly, whether or not they combine household work with paid work. So the writer is saying better than asking for or giving such things, just give the universal basic income for the poor household and see to it that money goes to the women directly, which normally happens or happened in the Jandan Yojana. Struggle for legislation. So demand that the state recognize housework is significant and its radical core must not be missed. So instead of talking about the housework and their wages, what the writer is saying is recognize their housework, put them as a part of GDP, bring a legislation. The ongoing struggle for national registration for domestic workers. These are predominantly women who perform women's work, but in other people's homes. They are therefore uniquely positioned to make this work visible and demand that its condition be regulated, minimum wages guaranteed, and work status and rights protected. So the writer is saying instead of first focusing on the domestic women and their wages, at least focus on giving rights, minimum wages, protection to the domestic workers who are actually doing the housework for payment, for the money. The question of how to measure and account for the value of household work has been seriously addressed by women domestic workers and their trade unions in Tamil Nadu and elsewhere. Their demands include an hourly minimum wage, a weekday off, and annual bonus and the protection of their bodily autonomy in the workspace. So, first focus on this, then afterwards on the housework and their wages, that is the housewives and all. So this is what the writer is saying. So those people who are doing domestic work, the servants, etc., focus on them first. Give them minimum wage, weekly off, annual bonus, and then we can talk about the other women who are doing it for their family. Conclusion: this is an agenda that all parties and not just MNM should could incorporate in their election manifestos. Should they take them seriously, the mandate of recognizing and monetizing housework? If domestic workers emerge as a strong force that succeeds in asserting the dignity of housework and making it visible and valued form of labor, this can only be good thing for all women performing housework in the long run. So it should be in the agenda of all parties. They should recognize and monetize housework. If first focus on the domestic workers, if they emerge as a strong force that succeed in asserting the dignity of the housework and making it visible and valued form of labor. This can be only done by this can only be a good thing for all women performing household work in the long run. So we have seen on the housework, wages, what is the history, positive, negative, and currently what we need to focus on, what are the problems. Now let's see the governor. The role of the governor, it is part of GS paper 3, GS paper 2, polity. Maximum governor. So we saw the person on your screen is Honorable Governor of Kerala. His name is Arif Muhammad Khan. So you just see the face. So we have Arif Muhammad Khan. Governors should not exceed constitutional duties to serve as agents of the center. So what has this governor done? He has exceeded the constitutional duties. He is working more as the agent of the center. The misuse of governor's office is to undermine duly elected state government is a particularly mischievous disruption of federalism. So the state government is elected, governor is just appointed, but governor is trying to take the power of the elected state government, which is very bad for federalism. Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan, Governor of Kerala, his refusal to convene a special session of the Kerala Assembly on December 23rd, as initially requested by the government, yet again proved this. He questioned the urgency of the special session and thought the assembly lacked jurisdiction to offer a solution. So what he says is, the state government had said, let's have a special session, but governor of Kerala says, why do you need a special session? Because the session was to be for the farmers protest and support the farmers, but what governor says is the jurisdiction to offer a solution to the farmers protest cannot be done by the state government. The agriculture comes in the state list, but still the statement was given by the governor. This is encroachment upon the powers of the legislature and elected government and abuse of his authority as nominal head of the constitution. So governor is abusing his authority because he is just a nominal head. The real head is the chief minister of the state. His conduct was comparable to that of his counterpart in Rajasthan. So this was not only Arif Muhammad Khan who did it, the governor of Rajasthan also, who refused to convene a session of assembly in July last year as demanded by the chief minister. Mr. Khan had earlier questioned a resolution passed by the Kerala Assembly on the CAA, that is Citizenship Amendment Act. So you are seeing the Kerala governor interfering a lot in the Kerala government's work. Besides making public statements supporting CAA and the farm laws, to assume that assembly is acting unconstitutionally if it disagrees with the parliament is disingenuous. So it is wrong that the state government is acting if it opposes or says something against the parliament, it is unconstitutional. This mentality is wrong. The state government has its own mandate, and it can, in democracy, they have the right to oppose whatever the parliament does. Yes, it should not hurt the unity and integrity. Such conduct by a governor can weaken federalism. One-day session on December 31st, which was sought to repeal the central laws that are at the heart of the ongoing farmer agitation. A resolution was passed with the support of the ruling LDF and opposition UDF, and unopposed by the lone BJP member, raised procedural and substantive questions related to these laws. The resolution pointed, though the one-day session continued, but the governor had tried to block it. The resolution pointed out that agriculture was a state subject and as a matter that seriously affects the states. The bill should have been discussed in a meeting of the Interstate Council. The bill was passed in haste without even referring to the standing committee of the parliament, with which the assembly termed as a serious matter. So in the one-day session, despite governor blocking, the state government did have a one-day session, and in that it was decided that the bill which the parliament has brought is wrong because agriculture is part of the state subject, and they should have at least spoken to the states in a interstate council. It was brought in very haste and tried to pass. The Council of the States, Rajya Sabha, has been systematically undermined by arbitrarily labeling bills as money bill. So the government is not only undermining the state governments, even the Rajya Sabha is not taken into consideration because they are considering, they make the bill as a money bill, and money bill does not need to pass in the Rajya Sabha. The use of central agencies to browbeat opposition ruled states is yet another strain on federalism. Okay. So we have seen the power of the governor. We have seen currently what is happening in Rajasthan and Kerala and various other states, especially in those states which are not run by the government in power, that is run by the states of opposition. And we have seen the governor should limit his power and allow federalism to work properly. Energy efficiency and BEE. Let's see what is this energy efficiency BE. So you must have heard about the star labels. Embracing energy efficiency. Doing so can bring household energy bills down and reduce the financial stress on discoms. So, if we use energy efficient appliances, our household bills will be low, and the financial stress of discoms. Discoms are distribution companies who who send the electricity. Their losses will be less. So you'll be thinking, why will their losses be less? Because of COVID-19, because of the financial stress, people were not paying the discoms bills. They're not paying the electricity bills, and you must have noticed around, and that is why these companies were in a stress. So one of the ways is, the article says, use energy efficient appliances. The power minister RK Singh recently announced electricity rights of consumers rule 2020. The rules lay down uniform performance standards for power distribution companies and make them liable to compensate consumers in case of violation. So, RK Singh, who is the power minister, said that all the power distribution companies should work and give the best standard. And if they don't, means if some company is giving good service, some others are not giving, the others who are not giving, they will be punished. The well intentioned rules come at a time when Indian discoms are struggling to manage their finances. This is partly linked to the drop in payment rates. As I have told you, the people don't have money, they can't pay their electricity bills. This is bringing a stress on distribution companies, as consumers are struggling to pay their bills amid rising consumption and tight finance. The government has sanctioned liquidity relief to help discoms tide over this crisis, but these are just short term fixes. Indian residential and electricity is consumption is expected to be at least double by 2030, as households buy more electric appliances to satisfy their domestic needs. Concerns about the ability of discoms to provide reliable supply at affordable rates will also rise. So the residential electricity consumption is going to double. Remember this, by 2030. So now the households will are as the households are buying more electrical appliances, there is concerns if the discoms will be able to give proper service. Embracing energy efficiency can be a win-win solution, as this can bring down household energy bills and reduce discoms financial stress. So how what is the solution? Bring energy efficient appliances and promote it and allow give incentives to people. Tryst with energy efficiency. In recent years, India has seen significant adoption of energy efficient appliances, especially those covered under the mandatory labeling program under the Indian Residential Energy Survey conducted by Council on Energy, Environment and Water and the Initiative for Sustainable Energy. So India has seen significant adoption of energy efficient appliances. The survey, covering nearly 15,000 households across 21 states, found that more than 75% of air conditioners and 60% refrigerators used in Indian homes were star labeled. So you must have seen the 1 star, 2 star, till 5 star it is there. Further, nearly 90% of the Indian homes use LED lamps or tubes. So people are now adopting to energy efficient appliances. However, there has been limited uptake of energy efficient ceiling fans and televisions. So in case of air conditioners, lamps, lights, tubes, refrigerators, there is energy efficient. But in case of fans and televisions, 90% of homes use fans, only 3% have efficient fans. Similarly, 60% of our television stock companies, the big old guzzling CRT cathode ray tube models. So still we need to focus on TVs, televisions as well as fans. Desert coolers used by 15% homes are not even covered under the labeling program. Significant efficiency gains are also possible for other appliances like water pumps, induction cook stoves. So the way forward, we have seen in case of fans and TVs, we need to improve. What is the way forward? First, we need to improve the availability and affordability of efficient, energy efficient appliances. We should see to it that they are being used. For instance, despite voluntary labeling scheme 2009, less than 5% of ceiling fans produced in India are star rated. We have seen, no, 90% of our people are using fans and only 3% are using the labeling fans or the labeled fans, and only 5% are actually star rated with the BEE. Remember, B, very important, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So you can star mark it. So Bureau of Energy Efficiency plans to bring ceiling fans under mandatory labeling from 2022. The high upfront cost will be another barrier. So currently BE star labels are there for air conditioners, refrigerators, LED lamp tubes, etc. This was a question asked in UPSC. At present, the most efficient fans cost more than double the price of conventional models. Second, so the first issue is labeling is not done. Second is prices are high. Second, India needs a nationwide consumer awareness campaign on energy efficiency. Only a fourth of Indian households are currently aware of B's star labels. While awareness levels are high among residents of metros and tier 1 cities, the majority in small towns and rural areas remain unaware. So, first is star rating is less, second is awareness not. Finally, we need to monitor supply quality and changing consumption pattern on a real time basis. As discoms in India deploy smart meters, so we need to monitor supply quality. Smart meters need to be put. Savings and demonstrate the benefits of energy efficiency devices to build customer confidence. The smart metering network would also be crucial. So, to save energy, what all things are needed? Star labeling needs to be done, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, reduce prices, awareness to be made, and smart metering, that is monitor supply quality. Conclusion: India has tasted success in recent years by embracing energy efficiency. The government's Ujala scheme transformed the market for LED bulbs while also helping India reduce its annual carbon emissions by nearly 82 million tons. A similar focus towards other energy efficient appliances would allow India to ensure 24 into 7 power for all. So just remember, we need to embrace energy efficiency. Schemes like Ujala scheme, very important, where LEDs were used. Will reduce 82 million tons of carbon emission and help India to have 24 by 7 power to all. So we saw five important articles. First being the FATF and Pakistan. Second, the housework, to give wages to the housework, to give value to the housework. Then we saw the gig economy and urban employment, governor, and finally energy efficiency. Thank you. And as we all know, the art and science of asking questions is source of all knowledge. Thank you.